let's talk about it. So I'm going to talk about the housing market and specifically about solutions for the housing shortage, because I think you all know there is a housing shortage. And here in Maastricht and Limburg as a whole, it's okay. We complain about it also, but relative to the rest of the country, it's kind of cool here. But in Amsterdam, The Hague, the Haarlem, Utrecht, people really are desperate, can't find a home, have to pay like crazy. Parents are really worried that their kids can't find a home if they have to at some point leave the home, and it creates a lot of anger. If a lot of the political anger in the Netherlands is that people feel that the government is not taking care of them and not taking care of them for their basic needs, and the housing need is one of them. If you ask people what's your main concern, it's really about standard of living, poverty, and it's about housing for them and for the children. That people worry that the next generation is going to be worse off. Again, to a large extent because of the housing. They worry that their kids have to have a huge mortgage to even have a shitty home. And that makes people angry, and that creates all this political tension in that. So the housing crisis is very central what happens in this country. Now, so I'm going to talk about solutions. One solution is to just leave and go sailing. I tried that, but then after 4 months, I decided that I love the country so much. I came back, so now I'm a home user again, like all these folks here. So what you see is, why do we need all these homes? Well, because we have all these people. And and there's growth in the population. And so the population, so I got a present for you. Such a yours. Yep, if you guys behave well, we got more presents, but he was late, so then I gave extra presents. Okay, so the population is growing in the Netherlands, has been growing and is expected to grow even more. Not a whole lot. I mean, this graph goes up, but if I would have shown you a population graph from the 1950s, you would have seen that actually the growth isn't so spectacular anymore. But it's still growing, and the expectation is that until 2050, when we're going to reach sort of a steady state, population growth is about 6.5% more. Come to this side, folks. There's a chair here, there's a chair there. You see, we have not just a housing shortage, we have a chair shortage. And the prices of chairs are going up. And Martijn, that's 50 euros. That's the price of that chair. That's 75 euros. The prices are going up. Anyway, so population is increasing 6.6% until the steady state. Household numbers are increasing even faster. And if we're talking about the housing market, it's not so much the population that we have to worry about, but the number of households. Roughly, it's one household, one house. If we get richer, it's even 1.2 houses per household, and we need even more homes, right, than we would otherwise need. And you see that the expected increase in households is 14.5% until we reach sort of a steady state in 2050. But the question is, these are predictions 25 years out from now. How good are these predictions? These are predictions from the CBS. Is the CBS good at predicting population change? And the answer is no. This is a history, a short history of CBS population prognosis. So you see 6 prognoses. The first started in 2010, then in 2012, then 2014, till 2020. And what you see is that every time the CBS has to adjust its prognosis upward. And so the CBS has consistently been too optimistic or pessimistic is a strange word here, but too modest in their population expectations. And you could say, well, who cares? But it is a bit of an issue because most of the government plans when it comes to house building, when it comes to planning, zoning, are based on these CBS predictions. So if the CBS underpredicts population growth and also household growth, then the government underplans for housing supply. And then if housing supply doesn't grow, but the population grows more than we expected, we get a shortage. So one reason for the shortage is that our expectations of population growth were too low. And so a couple of ministers of housing ago, we had Stef Blok, and who said, the Dutch housing market is finished. We don't need a minister of housing anymore. We don't need a ministry of housing anymore. We're going to integrate it in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and because this problem solved. And he said problem solved because the CBS said population growth not going to be so big anymore, right? So, but that turned out to be nonsense. So, and I think so. Two things happened that the CBS didn't foresee. The fertility was a bit higher, picked up a bit relative to what CBS had thought, and there was more migration, more immigration, and so CBS had underestimated both. And the question is whether they still underestimated, whether even this blue line, the top line is correct. We will see. I don't think so, because I think the immigration that we see is an almost unstoppable force. So I think it's going to be even bigger than that. And it means that the shortage is also going to be bigger. So now what do the households then look like? So here are 4 types of households. And again, this is projected. This is from the Primos prognosis. It's also based on the CBS and some. And then what you see there is that if you look at the different types of households, single households, people, two people with kids, so a couple with kids, couple without kids, and single parent with kids. And then you see that there is hardly any growth in any type of household. The growth is really in singles. And if you look at that more deeply, the growth is really in 55 plus singles. And so basically my age category is getting lonelier and lonelier, or more and more alone. And that's where the growth is in housing. So that's what you would think we should build for. As singles, we should build apartments for these singles. But that's not what we're building. We're building to a large extent still family homes. And so just the homes with a garden and everything. And why do we do that? That's because the market is so stagnated that let's say you first, let's say 30 years ago, I was a couple with kids. My wife and I were a couple with kids. And now the kids have left the home and my wife died. It's not true, but let's say she did. Now, I still live in this big home. No, the time of morning. So, okay. So no, don't tell her this. So, I divorced. Even worse. Okay, now. I'm now alone. So normally what I would like, I can't do the garden anymore. I've got pain in my back and everything. So I want to go to a smaller apartment, but I still want to live in Biesland. Now, there's hardly any small apartments available in Biesland, so I'm not moving. And this is a huge problem that people, even if they want to leave their bigger home, they don't, because there is no alternative. There is no smaller home in the same area so that you can keep your same social network, go to the same shops, to the same cafes, hardly available. And that means that people stay in this big home. And that means that the supply of vacant homes that you see on the market will not be big homes. Now, so we still have, for the new couples with kids, we still build big homes. But if you look at a net basis, we shouldn't do it. We should build apartments, which is far cheaper and far faster, far more you can be far more predictive in building there. But we don't, because of this stagnation in the market. So that's one problem. Yeah.
I was wondering, do we have data that these people are indeed willing to also make...
That's the second half of my talk, all about it. So yes, there is data, we're going to talk about it. Okay, so just remember this. So CBS says there is growth in demand, because people equals demand, and the CBS underestimates it, so it's actually bigger than the CBS thinks. Okay, how about supply? Supply actually goes down, and so These were the heydays of Dutch housing construction, and we constructed about 120,000 dwellings per year, right? So that was like from the mid 60s basically until the late 80s. So for 25 years we constructed 120,000 homes per year, and then it sort of came down until after the financial crisis. That was really bad. Then we did just like 40,000 a year, and we're now back to, let's say, 60, 70,000 homes a year. But the household formation is bigger than that. So every year, the growth in households is bigger than the growth in new dwellings. So that means the shortage that we experience is still going up, right? So you already experience a housing market that is bad, and people are already angry because of it, but the anger will increase because it's first going to be worse before it gets better. So, and that's because we just don't build. So there was a big housing shortage at the end of the war, and then the government decided, very importantly, the government decided to say, okay, we're not going to have, until the war, it was municipalities that decided whether there would be new houses, so it was completely decentralized. The government says this is not going fast enough. We take control. We're going to do planning at the national level. We're actually going to build in the whole new cities, Lelystad, Almere, and we're going to transform small villages into big cities. Well, big on a Dutch scale, not on the Chinese scale, of course, but for us, big, Rijswijk and places like that, and we're going to have these nota, these central planning, the nota's die aantallijke ordening, central planning decisions that were taken at the national level, and they said we're going to build basically on agricultural land, so we can build at scale, and that's very important. That's what they did until here, and then. The then Minister of Housing, when we still had a Minister of Housing, Pronk, was a socialist minister, and he said, you know, we don't want to sacrifice green area anymore, we don't want to sacrifice green land anymore. We got so many, let's say, areas within cities where we could build in principle. We're going to draw red zones about every city, and from now on, we're going to only build within these red zones. So we're going to only basically restructure. We're not going to expand cities anymore. It was not wholly like that, but that has been the policy ever since. And I will argue that part of the reason why we see this drop in production is that loses productivity. Because, and for a couple of reasons, I'll get back to it. You also see that at some point the sort of the more right-wing government we then had started liberalizing the rental market with the idea if we liberalize rents, that will increase supply, because then rents will go up, and that means that there will be an incentive for people, for investors to invest in homes. That creates an incentive for builders to build, and it will increase the supply in the housing market. And this graph shows experiment failed. That obviously doesn't do anything. It's complete. It really increased the rent for all of you. Yes, that's what it did, but it didn't help. It didn't solve the problem. Not solve it. The problem got worse. Okay, and this is the result: a housing shortage. And of course, it's a bit difficult to say what a housing shortage is, because at any given time the market clears. But this is the way this is defined is that at a given price, are you able to find a home? And then if people say no, not at that price, then this is the shortage. And you see that the housing shortage is still going up. Well, actually, a line that's going down means a bigger shortage, and will only get better from 26 onward. So it's first going to get worse. But still, this is based on the most recent, on the 2020 CBS prognosis for population growth, which I think are underestimated. So it's actually, I think, going to get even worse. Yeah, so now, this is the situation, folks. Not good. And and in terms of generational issues, so when I was sort of your age, the labor market was horrible. And so when I finished the study, the labor market was terrible and you didn't find a job. So I became a PhD student. There was nothing else to do. But the housing market was great. My best friend bought an apartment, a 50 square meter apartment in Amsterdam at a canal for 27,000 guilders. That is, let's say, 13,000 euros. That costs now more than 500,000, or probably 700,000 euros or something. It was that cheap to buy houses then. So now you guys can all find a job in 5 minutes, but you can't find a home, and if you can find it, it's terribly expensive. So that's sort of a reversal of fortune, but there you go. Okay, now let's talk about solutions. Are there any questions, by the way?
So, I'm sorry, wondering about the graph on the previous page.
Yeah.
Is assuming that it gets better, that's kind of based on the premise that all this current construction impulse that's happening will actually happen at that pace, right?
Yeah. And the point is that construction always happens later than you think. Even if you take account of the fact that you know that it always takes later than you think. And so it's that bad. And so, and I'll come back to that too, and how we can solve it. So I think this graph is too optimistic. I think demand will increase, and I think supply won't adjust enough. If we don't change stuff, but we can't change stuff because this is very important, folks. We're not talking about a force of nature here. It's not that, yes, the Netherlands is a very densely populated country, so supply is scarce, the supply of space is scarce, so inevitably prices are high. That is nonsense. It is all political choice. We choose this ourselves. Not you, but we as a population choose this ourselves. And I'll tell you how and why. Now, in order to solve this, most of the debate is about construction. It's about what do we need to do to increase supply. And I will talk about that too, because I think we need to increase supply. But it'll take a while. It's not fast enough. So we also should do something about demand. We should reduce demand. And then the question is how. And I will talk about that too. And these are really the only two flavors that work. All this stuff that Hugo de Jonge has done about changing the rental thingy from houses, from owning to rental. Basically, the whole Hugo de Jonge program has done nothing of substance. It has only created a move from rental to ownership, but it's without any consequence. And he has these prestatieafspraken, which don't mean nothing. It's a complete waste of time and energy if you don't increase supply or reduce demand. It's micro 101, 1.1, whatever you say. It's just supply and demand situation. If supply doesn't match demand, prices go up.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about it. Whatever Hugo says, right? So that's the problem at that ministry. They don't understand economics. So it would be good if you guys go work there because they need to understand it. Okay, so increasing supply and reduce demand, not or, and do it both. Okay. Issue number one is the battle for land. The narratives, I once had a discussion with this woman, this member of parliament from Green Left, GroenLinks, and she said, yeah, but we have to protect the grotto, and we have to protect the fox, and the deer, and the this. And I say, yes, we have to protect the grotto. But that's a narrative that is nonsense. It's not, there's no fight between nature and housing. We don't have a lot of nature in the Netherlands, and we should protect it as much as possible. What we do have a lot of is this. In Friesland, they call this grasveld. It's completely uninteresting agricultural landscape. And we have a lot of it in the Netherlands. We have very interesting agricultural landscape, like here in the Limburg Hills area. But we also have, for example, let's say the Haarlemmermeerpolder. That's the area sort of southwest of Schiphol, Hoofddorp. You can easily build a city there. The landscape is completely uninteresting. You can build a city of 200,000-300,000 people there. The landscape that Almere and Lelystad occupied was completely uninteresting, so it's great to build a city there. So, and we have more of that kind of landscape. So that's what the reality is all about. It is about this kind of land or housing. Then you can say, yes, hey, Piet, but we're not going to sacrifice all our farmers, right? We're not going to sacrifice all our agricultural land because, the Netherlands is a huge exporter of agriculture produce. That's the backbone of the economy. Well, first, it's not true because it's just 2% of GDP. But second, even if it were true, you don't have to sacrifice a lot. And let me show you how it works. So what I do here is I compare 3 small, densely populated countries that are very comparable in their location, in their GDP, etc. Denmark, Belgium, and the Netherlands. So I couldn't compare the Dutch situation with France or Germany or countries like that because they have huge amounts of space. That doesn't count. So I have to compare with 2 other countries that are a bit like us. And then I just say, okay, how have they decided to allocate their land? Because that's what this is all about. Because the supply of housing is ultimately about how do we allocate land to housing or to something else. Now, in the Netherlands, you see that we have not a lot of nature. What matters here is that do you count water or not? The way I've counted this is it just counts land. If we also count the Waddenzee and IJsselmeer and places like that, we have more nature, but this is only about land because we're not going to build on the IJsselmeer anyway. So I just focus on land. And then the Netherlands has 10% of its total surface allocated to nature. So the Gutto is in bad problems because of this. Okay. In Denmark and Belgium, it's much more. It's about twice as much, 20%. So more nature there. Less Gutto's, but don't have weiders, but they have other stuff. Now, then agriculture, folks. Agriculture. The Netherlands and Denmark have about, Netherlands is 55%, Denmark is about 60%, Belgium about 45% agriculture. So that is huge. That is the big use of land. There's some chairs there. Thank you. They're 200 euros. Okay. Yeah. And then housing. And you see that in Belgium, housing, the allocation to housing is about 8% of total land surface. In Denmark, it wasn't very big, but it has increased a lot because of it has reacted to increasing demand. In the Netherlands, it hasn't increased at all. It's about 6%. And it hasn't increased because Pronk, our minister, decided, and we still do, rode contouren, alles moet binnen, everything has to go in the city, etc. So, okay. So the first what we see is that of these 3 comparable countries, the Netherlands has decided, it's a political decision, there's no law of nature, that we allocate just 6% of our land to housing, which is not a lot. But, interestingly, the allocation to agriculture is about 10 times as much. Aha! Okay. So that would mean that if we reduce the allocation to agriculture with just 1%, and give that to housing, we then increase the allocation to housing land by 10%. The current housing stock is 800,000. So 10% more land for housing means if we build in the same density, 800,000 housing units. And what was the housing shortage we just saw? 400,000. Problem solved. The rest of the lecture we can go have the bitterball now. Because this is really it. If we do this, if we decide this, then problem solved. Because okay, show me the evidence. Here's the evidence. This is land prices, housing. This is land prices of land zoned for housing, right? In Belgium, Denmark and the Netherlands. These three countries that are comparable in density and economics and GDP. So in 2020, this is the year this graph is from, the average price of a square meter of housing land, so it's land zoned for housing, was 191 euros in Belgium and 225 in Denmark and 416 in the Netherlands. More than double. And house prices start with land prices. The price of a new house, just the price of land, plus the construction on it. The prices of the construction have also gone up. I'll talk about it in a minute, but the land price is the key. That's the biggest part of the total price of a house that you pay. And then you can say, yeah, okay, but that's, in Denmark they have all these regions up north where nobody wants to live. And in Belgium they have Wallonia, nobody wants to live there. I hope there are no Belgians, but okay. Okay, so let's compare Antwerp. Antwerp is at least as rich as North Holland. Let's compare Antwerp with North Holland. Hey, North Holland is like 750. Antwerp is, 300. So the same thing holds. If you compare urban area with urban area, it's about 2.5, the ratio. So the Belgians allocate more, they allocate more to housing, but it's not like they allocate 20% and we just 6%. No, they just allocate 8%. It's not like that's what the narrative think. Yeah, we have to sacrifice all the farmers for all these houses. It's complete baloney. We hardly have to sacrifice anything because we allocate so much to agriculture, and the difference is just so small. If we go up just a bit and make that political choice, we can go to Belgium and have land that is as cheap as Belgium. Okay, folks. Okay, unfortunately, we're not there yet because, this is one more piece of evidence why this actually works. In the Netherlands, so if you talk to people about housing in green areas, they say, yeah, then we have to sacrifice all these beautiful green areas, and that's where I want to do my bicycle trips and my hiking and blah, 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 blah. And then I say, wait a second. Why do you say that when we talk about housing? And why don't you say that when we talk about logistics and commercial real estate? Because there we sacrifice fields like crazy. We have no problems whatsoever. And this is really interesting in terms of outcome, because the demand for housing and the demand for logistics real estate has increased since 2005 in about the same pace. And the demand for logistics real estate has increased so much because, of course, of the internet revolution. Then we all buy stuff through the internet. We don't go to a store anymore. So they need these huge distribution centers to give us that stuff, yeah? And they build these distribution centers never in the center of a city, but always in a nice field where once the cows were grazing. That's how that goes. And we think that is totally okay politically. We do it all the time. Newspapers don't write about it. Great, I need that stuff from the internet, really cool. So since supply reacts so elastically to demand, rent prices have gone up just 20%. Inflation has gone up more or less the same. So in real terms, the rents to logistics real estate have been constant, almost. So if you have supply reacting elastically, adequately to demand, no problemo in things getting more expensive. At the same time, for houses, the rents went up 59%, so in real terms, 40%. Because there we say, no, we don't sacrifice green. Completely crazy, of course, but this shows you, that it's a political choice. We choose at the local level that, commercial real estate and logistics is great, and housing, not. Why? I can't tell you. I can't understand it. It's completely crazy, but it shows you, just like the Belgium example, that this supply, the way we treat supply, really makes all the difference. Now, okay, unfortunately, it's not just a matter of giving more land. But let's go to problem number 2, and then I'll talk about the problem number 3. Problem number 2 is that, and that's why I think we should also look at demand a lot. Problem number 2 is that it takes increasing amounts of time to build. So actually not to build, but to get to the building stage. And this is the average time to construction start. So from your first plan to actual construction start, because once you start building, it's like 1 year, 2 years, and then it's finished. That's not the problem. The problem is in getting there. And in 1970, that was 33 months, so less than 3 years. In 2018, that has gone up to 108 months, so almost 10 years. And in urban areas, it's even bigger. There you talk about 15, 20 years. Juan and I are going to visit the Houthaven project next month. In Amsterdam, a huge residential plan in the harbor of Amsterdam. It has taken 30 years between first plan and start of construction. And so in urban areas, this is even more of a problem. And that is because of 3 things. First, there is no capacity at urban planning departments, and because of continuous budget cuts in municipalities, they have cut these civil servants too. So there's no people, and if you have a plan, you need to give it to the municipality. They have to judge it. Yeah, if there's no people to judge it, then you wait. That's one problem. Second problem is that there are a lot of very small plans. So to give you an example, the total current stock of housing plans in Limburg, in our province, is for 45,000 homes. 1/3 of that is plans of one home. And a plan of one home takes about as much time for a civil servant as a plan of 10, 20, 30 homes, because it's mostly just, going through all these forms and judging stuff. Looking at architectural drawings for 100 homes takes about the same time as for one home. So that takes incredible amount of time. And why is that? Because we have these lot of contours, red contours, because we can't build large scale in the field. No, we have to build house by house within the city. And that takes a lot of time. And then there's also endless rounds of neighborhood participation and lawsuits and stuff like that. So people sitting people are very well protected under Dutch law, but people who don't have a house yet are not protected at all. And that can also delay stuff. And that's also a problem that is related to, again, building within a city. Because if you build within a field, there is nobody to complain. There's a couple of cows, a couple of sheep, but they don't file a suit. They don't complain. They get killed. It's bad, but then we eat them. Yeah, that's how it goes. So yeah.
I'm curious whether this is I think there's now the straatje erbij policy coming up, right? So then I think there will still be quite some complaints from people that live currently at the outskirts of the town.
I'm not for straatje at all.
No. But for about larger projects, another objection that I've heard about building in the green is that there is a lot of public costs to it because you have to build a lot of new infrastructure that is currently not there. Yeah. Whereas the benefits of it, of changing, right, what you say,
sure.
The benefits of it are currently accruing mainly to either the farmers or the project developers that buy the land just in time as they... So are you then in favor of taxing some of that, or what is the practicality behind, how do you finance this?
Financing is not really a problem, but the point is, I totally agree with the fact that it would be ideal to just do urban reconstruction and stay within the confines of the city and sacrifice no agricultural land and sacrifice no nature. I'm all for it. It's great. But the population is getting angry. Mm-hmm. They don't want it. The population wants that we solve their problem. And they don't say, I see what you mean, we shouldn't sacrifice this and we need to build the extra infrastructure. They say, get on with it and build the extra infrastructure. So yes, in an ideal world, if we would not have the population increase, for example, like northern Italy, there it's not a problem. It's really here that the problem is. So some cities in Germany don't also have growth. So fine, let's the little stuff that we need to build, let's build it in the cities. But we can't afford it anymore. That's what I'm saying. Okay, then the question is, who's gonna pay for it? Well, the point is that let's say I'm fine if a farmer makes money on this thing. Point is that who owns the right to rezone a piece of land? That is us. That's the public. Well, it's the government, but the government is the public. Now, land that is zoned for farming in the Netherlands is worth, 20, 30 euros or something per square meter. Land that is zoned for housing, I just told you, is 400 and something, right? So there's a jump in the land value of 370 on average per square meter. Who should pocket that? Us. Because it's not the farmer who made that happen. The farmer just happens to be there with his land. Now, we should say, okay, that land, we're going to buy it. We're going to buy it at agricultural zoning. It's worth 30 euros because that's if you would sell it to another farmer, that's what you would get. Okay, maybe we buy it for 50, fine. And the rest is for us.
And we as the municipality, because
The municipality, sure.
developers are mainly buying land, but
Yeah.
you are for more proactive.
Well, 100%. So it's completely crazy that we as a public, as a nation, control zoning, but somebody else makes the money. That makes no sense at all. So yeah, that's us. But yeah, okay. Now, this is a big problem. And so even if we would do what I say, and increase the amount of land for zone for housing, we have a productivity problem. And so this graph, the blue line, that's the number of new dwellings. The red line is new. That's the number of people that work in the construction industry. And you see that basically since the late 60s, that have been more or less stationary, not constant, because it fluctuates with the business cycle and with how it goes in the construction industry, but it is more or less stationary, around 500,000 people. In every industry, we see productivity increase. I used to work at Tata Steel when I was 19, and there were 30,000 people at Tata Steel. It was called Hoogovens at the time, or 35,000 people. Now 10,000 people work at Tata Steel, and they make more steel. And so productivity in every industry in the Netherlands has gone up tremendously. If you look at industry employment in the Netherlands, industry employment goes down because our productivity increase is so incredibly impressive, except for the construction sector. And so we have 500,000 people in the construction sector, and they used to produce 120,000 houses, and now they produce 60 or 70,000. Now, of course, that's not completely fair, because here we had a very small housing stock, so that means we didn't have a lot of maintenance to do, because we have a small housing stock, and we didn't need to increase the energy efficiency of these homes, right? So a lot of these folks are now employed not in building new homes, but in reconstructing old homes, in energy efficiency, and also infrastructure building and stuff like that. So you from this graph you can't really say that productivity is going down. But what you can say is that productivity is not going up fast enough. And because the chance that we're going to get more than that the building sector, the construction sector, is going to be able to increase the headcount to, let's say, 600,000 or 700,000 is not very big, because there are shortages of people in every sector, especially in every technical sector, in people who can actually do stuff with their hands. People like us who can do stuff with their hands, yes, plenty. But people who can do stuff with their hands, very, very rare. So the construction industry won't be able to get this much above 500,000, and maybe 550 or something. So that means more people, and then we can say, okay, then we get the people for Ukraine or Poland or whatever. But that means that we need more housing. So that doesn't solve the problem, right? Because then it increasing demand at the same time. So the only solution here is that we increase productivity in the construction industry. But like I just said, what we have done, we've said now we have the red contours, you just can build within cities, and productivity of these reconstruction projects in cities is just small. The only way to increase productivity is to go large scale and to go factory. And what we haven't done, the way the housing market works, let's say that every car you would buy was a prototype. And so you want a nice sports car? I built your sports car just for you. Your prototype. How do you want it? It's fine. And then you get that car. How much do you think that car would cost? 1 million, 2 million, 3 million? Impossible. So we couldn't afford cars. So what we've done, we have standardized cars. And then still have different cars. You have a Porsche, you have a Golf or whatever, but it's standardized. And because of standardization, we have increased productivity. In houses, the way we build houses, every house is a prototype. Every individual house has to go to the architecture committee, the Welstand committee, and be designed specifically, etc. And maybe if we go to scale, we have 10 houses that are the same or 20 houses the same, but effectively we're still in the prototype stage, which is crazy. There is no industry in which we do this, and if we stay in the prototype stage, we're never going to increase productivity. So what we need, so in the Netherlands, there is this, every Dutch municipality has a welstandscommissie, and the welstandscommissie that consists of architects, and they judge a plan. They judge a plan for housing or any other construction. And the interesting thing is that officially, by law, the welstand has no power. And the welstand has just advisory board. So the politicians, the aldermen and the civil servants can say to the advisory board, "Now, nice that you say it, but I completely neglect it because we're going to build anyway." In principle, that doesn't happen. But in principle, in practice, that doesn't happen. The practice is that welstand commissies, these architectural committees, have veto power, and they really don't like factory-based building. They don't. They want prototypes, which is not so strange, but they consist of architects. And if we would all build standardized products in a factory, how many architects would we need? Not many. So yeah, it's not so strange that if you have architects judging factory-based production, that they say, we don't like it. If I say this way to architects, they say, how dare you? How dare you say that of me? Okay, but we all react to economic incentives. That's clear, we're economists. So this is, of course, what's going on. So what we need to do on a national level, and that is where the central government needs a role again, or needs to take a role. Central government needs to say, okay, we're going to have 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 housing designs that can be standardized and built in a factory. And these housing designs at a national level, we say, are fine. So then a municipality can still go for a prototype house, but if a developer comes with a standardized home like this, the municipality has no longer any power to bring it to the welstand, and the welstand says no. Then the municipality has to say yes, because this has already been signed off at the national level. That way, we also reduce the amount of work at these desks at the municipality where the civil servants are completely overworked and all get burnouts. And so that's then also solved. And so the central government, when Hugo de Jonge started, was said, we are going to take back control. We're going to be in charge. And they were in charge of all kinds of nonsense, but not this sort of practical solution. That they haven't talked about. And we still have a veto to a committee that has no official power. And the committee usually says no. So the only way to go, just like in the car industry, when the car industry still built carriages as prototypes, it wasn't very productive. And then Henry Ford came along, And he started standardizing, and productivity went up, and now we all have a car. Or 2 cars, whatever. If we keep on building like this, productivity is not going up, and even if we then allocate all that land to housing, the problem will still be there because we just don't have the power, just don't have the people to build it. Yeah. Okay, folks. Now, yeah. Okay, I have to go to the next topic. Otherwise, yeah. Next topic is demand. Demand. So this was all supply. Now demand. Demand is if we can get more people in a dwelling, if we have more people sharing a home, then we can reduce the demand for homes, for the number of homes. That's what we need to do. But it's not happening. Households are getting smaller. So how do we do that? And why do people choose to live alone? So we have some research done about this. This is the average household size in the Netherlands. So it was in 1970 it was 3.5 and it's now 2.2. And as a result, in the Netherlands, we consume about, the average individual has 53 square meters of housing space. In Germany, it's 46, and in the UK, it's 44. So we consume a bit more space than our neighbors. And you could say, well, okay, it's just a bit more, right? It's 10 square meters more, 7 square meters more. Yes, but as a percentage, that's more than 10%. And what I told you about the housing stock, the housing stock is 8 million, the shortage is 400,000, that's just 5%. So if we can say, well, we're going to live like the Germans and share homes until we're going to be there on average, we've solved the problem. But how can we do that? Why don't people already live together more? Well, this is a rather complicated graph, and I'm going to show you 3 of these graphs. What we've done, we've said, okay, we have, there's 4 things going on in this graph. On the x-axis is different age groups. Younger than 25, 25 to 34, all the way to older than 67. That's the retirement age, 67. So these folks are retired. And then we have 2 colors of balls. The upper color, the upper balls are people who are households. Every ball is a household type. The orange ones are households with more than 1 person, and the blue balls are households with 1 person only. And the size of the ball and the number with the ball gives you the size of the home that they inhabit. Then here is the income of that household. So you see a couple of things. You see that there's a life cycle income kind of thing. So Milton Friedman is in this graph. So income life cycle, people make a lot of money sort of when they're at their top productivity, and then their average income goes down and it's pretty low. It's about as low as when they're not still studying, when they're retired, right? And this is for people who live in social housing, in the social housing sector. So there's 2 things, 3 things. First, older people tend to have bigger homes. See some special older singles, 50 meters, 67, 70, 75, 79, 81. So in the Netherlands, the older you get, the more likely you are to inhabit a big home. So your generation, not so good. Well, I'm not 67 yet, but let's say my parents, well, they're dead. But anyway, that would be good. So they have a big home. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, there's quite a big income fall for people who get older, and that we have to keep that in mind. And third, for singles, especially retired singles, their home is almost as big as for couples. And these are usually couples. 86 square meters for couples and 81 square meters for singles. That's big. And so I could live in a home of 81 square meters with somebody else. That's usually a 3-bedroom, right? But like I told you, they live in that home because the market is so stagnating, and there's then another home, a smaller home that they would want to live in, not available because that home is not on the market. Okay, very important. So older retired people consume a lot of housing space in the Netherlands. And their income is really falling, so maybe they need some money. Now this is the same graph, but then for free market rentals. So here you see free market rent. For free market rentals, so that's another market segment. And there you see the same sort of effect, but maybe a bit more outspoken. The income falls a bit bigger, but again, also for the older folks, here the houses are bigger, not much bigger, and you see that in social housing in the Netherlands, people are treated pretty well, because there, you're talking for retired people at houses of 86 or 81 meters on average, and in the free market rentals, it's 105 to 99. It's bigger, but not hugely bigger. It's not that people in social houses are really very badly off. But again, you see the same thing, that for the older people, it's almost the same. 99 square meters for a single person in this segment. And then we do the same thing for unoccupied, basically the same lesson. And so older citizens have larger homes, and the retired singles homes are almost as big as those for couples. Okay, so that means that if we could get these retired people to share their home, these single retired people to share their home, maybe we could solve the problem a bit. And then the question is, why don't they do that? Well, let's first look at the numbers. Could this really solve the problem? And the answer is yes. And so the number of singles in the social rental sector is 850,000, of which 360,000 are retired. 360,000 retired. In the free market rentals, 90,000, and this is couples, and in retired and owner-occupied is 300,000. So we have, in the total Dutch housing market, we have 750,000 people who live alone, and who live alone on average in a relatively big up. That means if we could have these folks to share a home, if all of them would share a home, the whole housing shortage would be solved. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen, and because people say, "Yeah, sorry, I don't want to share a home." So what we did is we said, "Okay, let's find out." First, we heard that there was a social housing institution in Rotterdam, the SOR, the Stichting Oudere Huisvesting Rotterdam. So it's a social housing institution focusing solely on retired citizens of Rotterdam. And they surveyed the people that rent with them, and they asked, would you be willing to share your home if we would reduce the rent, if you would go and then pay half the rent? So you would get a financial incentive for it. And 20% said, yes, I would be willing to do that. Now, if I tell this at the ministry in The Hague, they said, yeah, see, 80% doesn't want it. So nobody wants it, stupid idea. I say, no, 20% wants it. And 20% of this and this and this is a big number. That's 150,000 people. And the housing shortage is 400,000, so we can reduce the housing shortage by a third if we just accommodate these people. Okay, then we did a survey ourselves with 2 social housing institutions in Limburg. We did last year, Zo Wonen and Servatius. And there it's not just retired people, but also younger people. Now, younger people were less interested in this. There we got a response that showed that 7.5% of the people want this. But we also showed that people who live alone are more likely to want this. People who have a job outside the home are more likely to want it. Men like it more than women. People who feel that their home is large and it is work, they like it. People who feel lonely and people who worry about their health, they want it. Now, 7.5% is obviously smaller than 20, but even then, if it was just 7.5%, the numbers are so big that you can really make a difference. Now, why? Then we also asked people, why don't you do it? And they said, first, I don't want to give them privacy, and second, I don't want to give them freedom, because now I'm living on my own. I can do whatever I want. If I want to zonk out before the television, that's fine. Nobody tells me what to watch. Great, fine. So that means that there is a sort of a reluctance from people to do this. And we know as economists that if people have a reluctance to do something, maybe we should give them a financial incentive to do it to overcome that reluctance, right? That's, if, for example, I don't like to work. I like to sail and chill. But the university pays me a financial incentive called salary to show up at 8:30 tomorrow and teach. I'd rather be sailing, but I get a financial incentive. So it's that simple. Now, instead of giving people a financial incentive, what do? We give people a financial disincentive. And not just 1, 6. Let me tell them. The standard mortgage contract that people sign in the Netherlands prohibits subletting. And so if you have a mortgage and you live in that home, you sign that you're not going to sublet part of that home. If you do, that means that you commit mortgage fraud. And mortgage fraud has a prison penalty on it. It's not just a sort of something that is administratively wrong or something. No, it's actually a crime if you do that because you break your contract. The same for rental contracts. Almost every rental contract prohibits subletting. Standard in the rental contracts. And you say, for a mortgage contract, why would a bank prohibit subletting? Because if I sublet part of my apartment, that means I have more income, and then the chance of actually becoming in payment problems is less. So the risk for the banker is less. So I went to DNB and I asked DNB, do you guys have any rule or something that the banks have to do this? There is no rule. The banks do this out of their own free choice. Now, I understand why they do it because of current rent protection. And so if I have a home and there's somebody who I let a room to and I sell the home, and that person says, I'm not leaving, the law protects that person and not me. And then the bank say, oh, wait, then we don't have a home that is coming available, then we have a home with a tenant. And homes with tenants are worth less than homes that are empty. So because of the rent protection that we have, of the protection of rental tenants in the Netherlands, which, by the way, has gone even stronger because of Hugo de Jonge, less is hard. These banks don't want this, and the same thing it holds for landlords. They don't want it, and like I said, even if the rental contract allows it, the tenant protection creates a major risk that this secondary tenant won't leave because they're protected under the law. So these are 3 incentives that have to do with contracts. Then there's also pure financial things. If you have a retirement benefit, AOW, and you then decide to live with somebody, you have to, you're going to reduce your AOW income by 32%. And the same holds for the bijstand, well, 29%. And if you have a supplementary retirement benefit, because sometimes the AOW is lower than the minimum income level, then you get an AIO, supplementary benefit, and every euro you earn with subletting, you have to then give back. So there's a zero incentive to do that. It's 100% penalty. And then you can say, of course, but it's only fair. Because if people live together, their living costs are less. So of course, they have to get lower AOW. So morally, I'm with you. That's fine. Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay, they live together, so they reduce costs. So, okay, fine, they have to be. But the consequence is that they have a disincentive to live together. So then at some point we have to decide as a nation, do we want to be morally right? Or do we want to solve the housing crisis? If we want to be morally right, okay, fine. We keep doing what we're doing. We give people a 32% penalty if they decide to live together. But then we don't solve the housing crisis by reducing demand because people won't have an incentive to overcome their lack of privacy and their reduced freedom. If we say we want to make this a solution And this, by the way, is a solution where we don't have to give up square meters in agricultural space. Farmers happy, BBB happy, everybody happy. But then we have to do this, and then people can live together, and we have reduced the number of households and reduced the number of homes. But people need to get a financial incentive to give up their privacy and freedom, otherwise they won't do it. And to be able to say, hey, I keep my retirement benefit at the current level, that's a great incentive, because yes, people reduce costs by living together. That means that their disposable income will go up. Fantastic premium. Let's do it. But I'm not a politician. So yes, so what the government has to do is to look at these incentives and to look at the incentives not from a moral perspective, but pure from the perspective of, okay, all these things make sense on their own, but maybe we haven't thought about the unintended consequences for the housing market. And maybe we should. Now the problem, of course, is that the ministry that looks at the housing market is the Ministry of BZK. That's a ministry that has nothing to say about fiscal measures, about AOW, about bijstand, about rental contracts, and about mortgage contracts. And that mortgage and rental contracts, that's DNB maybe, or Financiën. And Financiën usually does not take advice from BZK. It's just not how Financiën works. Financiën gives advice. And it's a different type of folks. AOW is Ministry of Social Affairs. Bijstand too. But so you have to look across ministries, and that is very difficult because every ministry looks at their own stuff, and they get angry if other ministries look into their wallet. But that's what we have to do. So to sum it up, what time is it? Yeah, it's already too late. To sum it up, we need to do something about supply. We need to go large scale. We need to go factory because productivity needs to go up. And we need to have more zoning of housing land. There's no doubt about it. And we also need to do something about these disincentive to live together. And then maybe we can solve this. You never know. Then. What's next? Next is the QR code. Yeah, we know.
Oh, sorry. Just one short question. Why not building a bio?
That's a great idea too. But the point is, fine. Build higher. It's so.
Is there specific reason that this is like the first Germany not where big? I mean, in Germany you have this big buildings with this like
it's
a cultural thing.
Building higher above a certain number of floors is more expensive, in fact, than building low. So I think above 6 floors or something gets more expensive. Also has something maybe to do with the land in the Netherlands. There's a lot of mud, and if you build on rock, that is easier to build high. We don't have a lot of rock. The only place where we have rock is actually here. That's it. The rest is all mud and clay.
True.
Yeah, that was.
Another thing I took away from these stupid balls that you had was that the amount of toilet space consumed is much higher for people that own.
That's right. Yeah.
So Dutchies are much more of a homeowners, so he the Germans.
Yeah, but the Germans have the low world record in null ownership.
I think it's not a fair comparison, but still, there's many incentives, sort of stimulus, low stimulus for home ownership as well.
Yeah.
Don't you say that's cheaper?
Well, no, of course. That's the point. Is there's in the Dutch, Dutch regulation in terms of rental protection, rental tenant protection, and tax system is that for rich people we subsidize by fiscal measures ownership. And for poor people, we subsidize renting. And for the mid sector, we subsidize nothing. And they get squeezed. So that means that most rich people own a home and most poor people rent a home. And of course, not everybody, but that's sort of... And for example, older retired people have very often low income, but still have a home. But they bought that home a long time ago. So, but that's more or less what it's about. But that doesn't do much that doesn't really mean much in terms of overall supply, of overall demand. The problem is that that's what the housing policy of the government is always about. And we shift a bit more to social protection, we shift a bit more to fiscal stimulus here and there, and then the only thing is that you see sort of a flip-flop between do we subsidize owners or tenants, but it's ultimately all that stuff subsidizes demand. If we subsidize demand, that's also just simple economics. If you increase demand for an inelastic supply, there's only one thing that prices will do: up. That's also economics 0.0. Yeah, but that's what we do all the time. It's frustrating. Yeah.
Do your Dutch people have a tax on transactions of housing, like when you buy or sell a house? Because I know that in Germany, depending on which state in Germany you live, you have up to 6.5%.
Ja.
You say Grunderwerbsteuer, it's like you buy a house and so.
Jawohl, haben wir auch. Natürlich. Yeah, but we didn't really have it. We had a transfer tax of just 2% for everybody. And then the government said, that's unfair because poor people, people who buy a home for themselves, starters on the housing market, they also have to pay this 2%. And these rich investors who will have a whole portfolio of homes, they also. So we know what we're going to do. The poor people have to pay, people who buy a home for themselves pay 0%. Great. But now investors have to pay 10.5%. Fine. That. Okay, fine. I have no problem with milking investors. So fine, let's milk them. But what does it mean in terms of incentive? Investors are going to say, okay, that means that in order for me to have a good return on this housing development, I need to either increase the rent or I'm not going to do it. And so it either increases cost or it reduces supply. But so it's the same thing. The government doesn't think in general equilibrium. They're just thinking smallish things that maybe help, but they don't. It amounts to nothing. Okay, yeah.
As the first thing I want to say regarding building higher policies, in Europe it's the problem that most cities in Italy, also Munich is a very great example, you have ensemble protection in the city, so you're not allowed to build private as a church or any kind of landmark. And the second question I do have is regarding the policymakers, because you said you reached out, for example, to the Dutch government.
Sure.
Did you also reach out to the province of Limburg, the city of Maastricht?
All the time.
What are the responses you're getting from the different political levels?
Yeah. And what exactly?
Like on your ideas? Because I think that there are many practical ideas that could be implemented.
Well, for example, the latter part about demand, we've really been doing a campaign, and Niels Kok and Linde Kottenberg and I about all these demand things. We do a sort of opinion campaign, and it's sort of gradually taken over by the government that this may be a good idea, but more as in an abstract way. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, but not in, okay, we have these 6 disincentives, let's get rid of them. Let's really get active on doing something about it.
Yeah. Because we had an election recently, right? And housing was an issue.
Well, we had what?
We had an election in the Netherlands recently. So
yes, it's a main issue. Yeah, and then everybody says we're going to solve it.
Hey, we won the election.
Yeah, okay. And then they say we're going to solve it. Have you seen any serious measure about what they're going to do to solve any of these problems?
No, but you should be in
Yet.
the Hague and not have builders.
I am in the Hague, and then they say, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so clear funding.
But also, if you ask people in the polling like the pre-election survey, there is a question about bouwen in het groen, building in the green. The majority of people votes against.
I know.
So there is, and that might be due to the perception that you described, right? Building in the green is indeed for most Dutch a perception of like, oh, we're gonna lose the H here.
Yeah.
And whereas that might not be the reality. Yeah. But the majority of people is focusing on we want to build only within the parameters of the city.
So people are really misinformed.
Yes.
They're misinformed. They really think that's why I started with this Rutte versus the big machine. That's really the narrative. The narrative is a home or nature. Oh yeah, nature very good. And people don't realize that we have to sacrifice just a very small fraction of agricultural land to solve this problem. They think, yeah, it's a choice between agricultural land and housing. All the farmers are gonna go away. It's complete nonsense. But that's the narrative. So we write a lot of articles about it, that this is not the right narrative, but yeah, that's just us. So so I think people are misinformed, and which is one of the reasons why they vote what they vote.
About the productivity, how you looked in Belgium and Denmark, because they increased higher production.
Well,
It's also the same entity.
yeah, the point, what I think, I don't think labor productivity in Belgium is very high either. But the point there is that Belgium has had a liberal land policy already since the war, really. So they don't. What we have is a sort of a
Backlog.
Yeah, backlog in housing, and we need to solve it, and productivity needs to go up. There's no backlog in Belgium, really. Maybe in a couple of urban areas, but on the whole, no. So for the problem is less of an issue there.
Correct. And also about the stipend, the cities. We had a discussion at Tuesday with Scott, and he agreed that every city look at it the same in Netherlands. So they just propose something that's looking the same already.
Then in fact, no. Well, then if we already look the same, then what do we care?
Yeah.
Then it's not even a problem. Then despite all this advice from architects, we all look the same. Well, let's then just get rid of it and really look the same. No problem. Yeah, problem solved, yeah.
I was wondering whether the Vienna model is actually a viable solution for.
What's the Vienna model?
A Vienna model, or like a measure that was taken from Vienna, was to hold about 50% of the housing in the public hands to stabilize the markets, and essentially try to prevent to liberate as many housing units as, for instance, in Germany did.
Yeah, it sounds cool, but the Netherlands already has 1/3 of the housing stock is social housing. So that's not just Vienna, but it's the country as a whole. So we do it already. So, and there, and it works to some extent, because the housing rents in the social housing stock over the long term, since 2000, have sort of tracked inflation. So it hasn't gone up. But what's the result? Well, the result is waiting lines. If you want a social housing in the Netherlands, you have to wait 14 years. Yeah, so if the market can't clear because we have an artificially low price, then we go to another distribution system, which is waiting in line. That experiment was great. That was East Germany, Russia, Romania after the war. We keep the prices low, but then you have to stand in line. That's how we do it. That's the Vienna model. I don't know if it's in Vienna, but that's the Dutch social housing model. You have to stand in line. And here in Limburg it's less bad. Here the waiting line is just 3 years. But even 3 years, God, if I need a home now, 3 years is a long time. So, but that's also just standard economics. If you artificially lower the price, another distribution system will start.
One more question.
One more question, then we have bitterballs. Nog maar time, Hans, schiet ze op, man.
Simple question, I perfect. Help, but what about the senior living concern? Yeah, because I mean in the Netherlands we don't have senior living, we only have care living now. Yeah, but it's actually the old people staying in a big house.
Yeah.
So shouldn't we just build more high quality senior living, small surface area, and that they open up?
Yeah, well, for it, let's do it. Yeah. But then you have to build it at for example, Mercurius, they own a large housing stock. And what they told me is that they have these large homes in Gouda. And with the garden and everything, 3-bedroom. And most of them they've been built in the 80s or 90s or something. And most of them are inhabited by single older people. And they started out as families. But people don't go away. And even if they say, if you go away, you get a premium, that they go away. So what did Mercurius do? They said, okay, in that same neighborhood, we built a housing project with small 1-bedroom apartments. And so that people don't have to change their social setting, their friends, their sports, And then they said, okay, you go to that apartment and we give you 3 months rent free and stuff like that. And then people do it. So you have to do that in a tailor-made way. But the whole thing is a sign of a market not working. You know, just like there is a natural rate of unemployment of 3-4% to make the market work, that's the how you say, the lubricant in the market. So you also need a natural vacancy rate. And in commercial real estate, the natural vacancy rate is also 4 or 5% to make the market work. So in a good housing market, we would have a natural vacancy rate of 4 or 5%. But the vacancy rate in the housing market is not even 0.5%. So the market doesn't work. If the market would work because we would have a natural vacancy rate, then we wouldn't have all these problems that you have to have it here or there. Then people could just find a home. But they go. So, yeah. So, okay.